Hello, my name is Braden Moore. I'll be going over our woodworking software that I was given the honor to spearhead and create. The purpose of this video is to sustain confidence in our management personnel, create a foundation and learning tool for users down the road, and please note that this project has been created with the intention that the common user can edit changes when needed. There are two sections to this video. First, the overview. Second will be the project itself. As mentioned, our first section is the overview for the woodworking department software. I will now provide the viewer 10 seconds to pause, then read the overview. Our second section is the project itself. We'll be both exploring the accounting side, then the operating side, and how they operate together. Please note the project has play data in it already to showcase the viewer how the project operates when in use. I will now award the viewer with 10 seconds to pause, and then read the purpose of each sheet. As we work our way into the project, I'll be going off script. I will attempt to explain each sheet thoroughly, then we'll work through an example. What we see now is what the operators see on their side of the workbook. There's only 5 tabs total that the operators do have to deal with. The first two are both the timesheets. If we encounter more employees down the road, we'll be able to add more timesheets. But for this example, we have John's timesheet, and the only things that he actually has to fill in is this top portion, and these stay filled in once they're filled in. You put your manager's name, your manager's email, and then the employee name as well. As the dates go on, you would simply put your date that you worked, the project you worked on, and when we have projects in use, they'll be able to select from them, and then the hours that you worked as well, in a description. Same goes for Douglas as well, he'd do the exact same. One of the key features with this timesheet is if we go towards the bottom when they fill out the full entire month, and they press this button right here, they're able to actually submit the timesheet. When you submit a timesheet, and we will see a live example of this, when you submit it, let it go up. Maybe there we go. When you submit a timesheet, it clears the timesheet, but it also sends your timesheet to this email right here. So it's a very easy way to submit your timesheet. It sends by email automatically, and then it clears the timesheet for future use. Another sheet that they will see is the project tracker. This was stated before, but this is by far the most important sheet that they'll see on a management side and an operator side as well. This sheet will give you a full entire summary of every single project. It has quick links to go to a project, and it has a total cost as well. So if management wants to look at or find a project and look at the total cost, they're able to do this on this sheet. There's also 2 buttons up here, the accounting use button and the material to project button. We'll begin to both of these when we actually get into the example. And we have 2 sheets right here too. This is unhide completed and hide the completed sheets. So as you have multiple projects and you start finishing multiple projects, we don't want all these sheets down here that the operators have to kind of sort through, so you're able to easily hide all the completed projects by clicking the button. The next sheet that they'll see is an inventory list. This acts as a summary from our actual inventory that we have on the accounting side of the workbook. The operators will be able to come in here and just see what they have on hand. For example, this wood at this measurement, we have 26 quantity, and that's our total inventory value for that as well. This can be very useful for management as well if they want to see what's in stock. And then the next sheet is going to be your project creation sheet. Our ideal is that the operators will actually create projects themselves. And we'll eventually get into an example of this, but it's very quick, very streamlined, and most of the stuff is just drop down. For example, this, you just press your location, you're going to find where you're working at, and you just go on throughout the workbook. If we want to go to the accounting side of the workbook, we'll go to Project Tracker. And just to show, if we go to Unhide, there's no accounting sheets in here, but we go to Project Tracker, we go to Accounting Use at the top, it will ask us for a password. For the sake of this example, the password is strictly password. Then enter the password, they'll press OK. If the password is correct, we have 6 more sheets that's available. This is strictly for the accountants and those that's going to be operating the workbook behind the scenes. The operators are not able to get into this. So with our inventory input, this is where you're going to put invoices. When you put an invoice, you're just strictly going to fill out the information that's up here. You'd put in the invoice subtotal and then the material that's on the invoice as well, and so on and so forth. Very self-explanatory. When you do have that finished, you'd insert it into the inventory. And like I said before, this does have data in it. It's all dummy data, but just show what the workbook's like. When you insert the inventory, or invoice, pardon, you go to inventory detail, and this is where it's going to show up at. It goes by a first in, first out system, so it'll just be logged at the bottom, and it'll just go underneath this line right here. The next sheet is when they add materials to a project, it will go into our WIP system. And we'll eventually get into that and I'll showcase that too. The inventory will pull from the inventory detail that acts as our whole, and it will actually just go into our WIP, and then it will tell us what project that material is assigned to. The next tab that the accountants have is an invoice tracker. From here, as you put invoices into the system, you'll be able to have an invoice tracker as well. This will show you the input date, the invoice number, the vendor, the material, and so on and so forth. You get a full entire invoice detail. One of the things with this, if you want to just look strictly for an invoice, if you press the drop down here, you can find your invoice in here, or you can also search it as well. And we had it pop up there. Same goes with the vendor as well. If you want only vendors, say Lowe's for example, we'll unselect Home Depot, and Lowe's will show up. The next tab that the accountants have kind of works as a basis tab that runs the whole entire sheet. This sheet here is to enable anyone to be able to edit this workbook. It's not someone that strictly knows VBA, rather absolutely anyone can edit this workbook when needed. So if we have a new material, they'll be able to come in here to the variable sheet and add it into our column A and just at the bottom. And when you insert a material in here, this will add to the drop downs that the operators select from. The same goes with the facility abbreviations, with the facilities. Projects that's created gets logged in here as well. Same with invoices too. Now there are 2 buttons over here. This will break down how we got our numbers when we get into the project. For example, our fixed cost, it'll tell absolutely everything with our fixed cost, and this is how we calculate our fixed cost. Labor cost as well, this actually asks for a password. I will not be showcasing this in this example, but it also tells how we got our labor cost added to the project itself too. And lastly, holidays. This just strictly cancels out all holidays. So when Project Tracker calculates the actual days and duration, it cancels out those holidays. As we begin our example, we will start on the accounting side of the workbook. We will start with an invoice entry. So if we go to the far left, to the inventory input, this is of course where we will place our invoice. So for this example, I have a pre-made invoice created for this presentation, so we'll go ahead and begin with that. To start, our invoice subtotal is going to be $300. And note, when your invoice subtotal and your invoice input do not match, you will have a difference here. It will show you what the difference is, and it will be a red fill as well. So to go, we have our invoice number, which is going to be 987654. Our vendor I have placed as Menards. Our sales tax cost will be $20. And our freight will be $25. When we place material into the system, we can press on the cell. You'll see a drop down right here, and you'll be able to find your material within the drop down. So our first material will be this material right here. We have 5 of these and a per item cost of $10. As we go on, you can also begin typing, and you can narrow down your selection. And I know my next example will be 5 by 8, and there it is. That's just an easier way. We have 7 of these at $15. Our third will be wood, so it gives us all of our wood. And this is at a half. We have 6 of these at $14. And then once again, we have wood one more time. And this is going to be a 1 by 2. There we go. And we have 2 of these at $8 per as well. You'll now be able to see that we have a difference of $0, and that just ensures that you do have all the information placed. So to showcase a few things before we actually place this into our inventory, I want to show a few safeties that we have implemented. Our first safety goes with the receipt and invoice number, as well as the vendor as well. So if you're missing an invoice number and you're missing a vendor, and you try inserting this into the inventory, it'll give you a prompt saying, hey, we need an invoice number, we need a vendor as well. You're not able to place this inventory within the system unless you do have this information. Now, if you only have one filled in and you try, it'll just tell you the vendor, and vice versa as well. Another thing that's implemented is the sales tax cost and freight. If we are missing both of these, and we try placing this into our inventory, it'll tell you both sales tax and freight are not included. Are you sure you want to continue? Now if we only have one included, and we had sent this, it'll tell you that freight is not included as well. And that goes vice versa as well. If it's just sales tax that's not included, it'll tell you that sales tax is not included too. Perfect, and we will change our invoice subtotal back to 300. Now, one last thing I want to showcase is if you try placing the same invoice into the system twice, it'll also give us a prompt too. This is an invoice I already have within the system. It's just 6 ones, and if we try putting this through the system, it'll tell you that this invoice has already been implemented into the system. Do you wish to continue? You can still push this invoice into the system if you need to, just by chance that there is 2 invoices that have the same number, but you do get a prompt beforehand just warning you that, hey, maybe this has been already put into our system. For our case, we'll press no, and you can find all these invoices that's within the system. If we go to the variable sheet, and we can see right here, that is the invoice that's already into our system. 654. I will now place this into our inventory. It'll tell us inventory has been successfully added. If we go to our inventory detail, we will be able to find this at the bottom. And we can see right here, we have 4 lines as placed on this date. This is the invoice here. This is the vendor, and then it'll also tell us the material, the quantity, the per item cost, and the total as well. It also gives us a running total of what's in our inventory too at the bottom, which you can also find at the top. If we go to our invoice tracker, we should be able to see that we have a new invoice within that as well. We can see that was posted on this date. We had this invoice number, this vendor, these are the material, the quantity that goes with these materials, and the per item cost, the sales tax, freight, and total. So we'll go back, and then we will begin on a project as well. To begin, we will need to go back to the operator side of the workbook. To do so, we will come back to the project tracker at the bottom, go back to our accounting use tab, and we would put our password. For the example, it is going to be password once again. And now we're just reduced down to the original 5 sheets. Again, these are the 5 sheets that the operators do use. Please note, to showcase how the workbook works, we will occasionally go back into the accounting side of the workbook. However, when in practice, the operators will never need to do this. So to begin a project for the operators, they will come to the project creation sheet, and they'll be greeted with this. A little daunting at first, but when you actually understand the system, it is very easy. On the right, we have a few notes. The first one says, do not fill in any gray fields. The project name will be generated automatically based on the location, start date, and project. The second section says, this section is intended for preliminary estimates before the project begins. This section only works as more of an estimate as you go into the project. Just so if you need to go back and refer to the project, what do we think that we'll need, we'll be able to have this as basis. And then this bottom portion, on this right side, this is for invoices that's specific to a project. So for our example, we're only housing wood in our inventory, but if we need something like black paint, for example, we would not add that to our inventory, rather we'd just add it to the project itself. And that's what this system is here for on the right. At the bottom, we have our project contacts, of course, our name, our phone number, the email section as well, where they can find contacts that are important for the project very easily if they go to the project sheet. So as we begin, we will go through and we're only going to fill in the white sections. So to start, our location for the project, we'll have a drop-down menu right here. We have all of our locations that we can choose from. Of course, you can select a location, or if you need to, you can just type in the start of your location. You can find it. So for this, I think I will go ahead and do Indian Spring, just for example. Now this is reduced down to an abbreviation because we are going to be creating project names with what we select, and the project name will eventually become our sheet name as well. And with Excel, you only have 31 characters that you can make a sheet name down to, so we do have to reduce these. So the start date, we will just select for no, don't do that. For the case of presentation, you can scroll through here, but of course it's going to be a lot easier if we just type in, and we'll just say the 20th for this example. Then our estimated end date, we'll put today's date. Now the project, and again there is a drop down here too. For the project, they'll be able to press down on the project, or on the drop down, pardon, and they'll be able to find a project to choose from. These projects can be added within that variable sheet as well, so if there's new projects that we don't have in the system, anyone can come in and be able to add a project that the operators will be able to choose from. For this example, we'll just use a nursing station. And again, it is reduced down. Now again, this next section is just going to be preliminary estimates. I will just place a few materials in here. Maybe we're going to use this material right here, and we have 4 of those. And we'll just add another material just for the sake. This material here, and there's going to be 6 of these as well. Over here, I am just going to add what we have listed down here, just so I can showcase it. And I'll just put an invoice number as something random. And we'll just say this is from Lowe's. And I will say this is going to be black paint, a gallon, and we have 2 gallons. And for this case, we'll say it costed us $150. Now as we come to the bottom, we'll be able to place specific people that we want to keep in contact, or maybe a company. For this case, I will just go ahead and put my name, Braden Moore, and for my phone number, I'll just place 9s, and we'll put somebody at yahoo.com. Now, if they want to reach out to this person by email, they can actually just select on this, and it will give us the prompt to email. Very easy and very streamlined way to email. So when we feel comfortable with what we have and we feel like everything's filled out, we'll be able to come here to the top right and create our project. Are you sure you want to create this project? Yes. As we create the project, we will be prompted with a message saying that the project has been created successfully. So if we press OK on that, the first thing that we can note is that we have a new tab at the bottom. The new tab is going to be named after what the information was that you placed in here. It creates the project name, and then it is naming the sheet after that project name. It also clears out our project creation sheet, so the next time they need to create a project, you have a clean slate to start with. The third thing to note is in the project tracker, we have a new sheet. So if we review our project that we created, we can go down through it, and we'll notice that this section right here has now been grayed out, so the operator knows not to enter any more information in here. However, the information has been brought down. This second section here is just strictly what is being used. The section on the left, the material, which is our wood inventory that we keep in stock, will be brought over when the project's completed. So nothing is needed to be filled out on this side. On this side, this entry right here is pulled down. And if there's any more invoices as for this project alone, they'd be able to add it into this white section here. If we notice, we have $150 in our invoice total at the moment. If we go to the top, we can see a detail running of all of our costs. And in the material, we have $150, as well as shop supplies being $15. At this point in time, we decided that 10% of our material costs will be shop supplies too. So now that we have a project created, we can also add materials to this project. So if we go to Project Tracker, then here at the top right, add material to project. If we press on this, it'll run us through a prompt. The first thing that it says is, what project did you work on today? All of the projects that have not finished will be highlighted on the left, so the operator knows that they just select from the highlighted projects. So we know that this project here is the one that we are working on because we just created this project. We'll select it. Okay. It will now ask us, what material did we use? They will just go through the material, find the material that they used maybe for the moment, or at the end of the day, they can log all the material that they used. And they can just say, we used this material right here, this wood. Here, press OK. And then lastly, enter the quantity used, manually type the quantity that was used. For this example, we will just put 6, and we should see this quantity here reduced by 6. And it did. Now you can repeat this cycle if you used multiple material. We can go through the cycle again. So if we want to add more material to that project, yes, and it just repeats the cycle. What's the project that we worked on? It was this project here. Okay. And maybe this time around we'll find another one that has a good big quantity with it. Let's go to this right here. This is the material that we used. And then manually type the quantity that was used. And we'll just let's put 5 for this one. Okay. And would you like to add additional materials for this? No, we are finished. Perfect. So I'm going to show what happens on the back end when we use our whip system. Now, of course, the operators do not need to see this, but rather for understanding on how we are calculating, I will show the back ends. So if we go to our project tracker, accounting use, and we go into the accounting side of the workbook. If we go to our whip system, we'll now have new entries. This whip system pulls directly from the inventory detail. The inventory detail acts as our whole inventory, and it works as a first in, first out type system. So what we see here has pulled from our inventory detail and is now in our whip. And again, just like the inventory detail, We just have information from the entry that pulled from because it's first in, first out system. For this entry, it looks like we pulled from an entry on this date. This is the invoice number, lows, quantity, per item cost, and we have a total here as well. The thing to note with the WIP system is this project assigned. So to explain, when they select the project that they worked on, it is actually working with this WIP system. So they select their project, the material, then the quantity that they use. Then it goes into our inventory detail, it pulls that material and quantity, then it adds that project to that into our WIP system. So if we go back to our new project that we just added material to, we'll be able to see that we have a running total now for material cost. And that's of 269.28. And again, that's just calculating from within the WIP as they add materials. Now, if you go to Project Tracker, we will be able to see that we have a running total on the right as well. This running total is always updated as you add material, labor, or whatever the case is to the project. You'll be able to see the running total within the project, and you'll also be able to see a running total on the project tracker as well. This is extremely useful for management, just if they want to go in and see what a project's looking like, or they want to find a project real quick and see what the total cost is, they can do that. They can also go to the project again by pressing the hyperlink. It'll lead them directly there. They'll be able to see the material costs, the shop supplies, labor costs when we do come around to that, and fixed costs too, just see a little bit more in detail. One thing to note that the material cost has the wood inventory that is going into the material cost, as well as our extra invoices here at the bottom. Those are both summed together. So this is calculating what's in the WIP, plus, if you look right here, what is added down here, just so we get a full material cost too. Now, if we want to add labor to our project as well, first I am going to exit out of our accounting side of the workbook, just so it's easier to view. If we want to add labor to this project, both of our operators can go to their respective timesheet, John for example, and he'll be able to place, say today, and I think that we said that we're playing it like it's July 20th, so I'll just say on the 20th of 2024, I did this. I worked on this facility. They'll be able to select only from the projects that are not finished in the project tracker. So when they select a project, it only pulls from projects that have not finished with it. They will not be able to see this one right here, and that's just so they cannot add hours to a project that's already finished. So John, once again, he will go to his project, hit his drop down, and he'll say, I worked on this project. And as more projects are not finished and several are in the works, he'll be able to select from multiple. But he can say, I worked on this project, and I did it for 8 hours today. And maybe he said, put up a nursing station. Sure. Here it's just more of a description, just so the manager can be able to see what they actually did with their hours. Now, if we go to that project, we'll be able to see that we have a new labor cost filled out too. And how this is working is basically on the back end of things. It is taking John's hours for the project, and then where we had the labor cost at, or that labor, it has his hourly rate in there as well. And it's going to take this as well as several other factors that's added into hourly rate. And it's going to take that times the hours, and then it calculates right here for the project. If Doug does the same exact thing, he says on this date, I worked on this project, and I did it for 8 hours as well. And he might say, put up a nursing station. We'll be able to see that we have increased again. And this is summing both John's hours times his rate, plus Doug's hours times his rate as well. And it's giving us a labor sum. We will also be able to see that our fixed cost has increased as well. Our fixed cost is calculated by our fixed cost rate, and it just is times by the sum of the total hours on that project. So we have fixed cost rate, and then it's times by the total hours that both employees have added into that project. And we'll be able to see that we have a running cost of $1,121.77. If we go back to the project tracker, we'll be able to see that right there too. That running total is still correct, and it's a very easy way that management will be able to see that running total. Now again, if needed, if management sees that and they're like, I wonder what goes into that total cost, they'll be able to press and they'll be able to see the full detail here. If we go back to our project tracker, one thing that I do want to point out, as we add more projects to our project tracker, you'll be able to see here at the top that we have a percent of projects completed. One idea for management is that they want to have a threshold, say 60, 70%, whatever the case is. They say, let's keep our threshold of completed projects at 70%. That might be an idea for anyone that wants to incorporate that, so you're not creating multiple projects. You're kind of keeping a little bit of a level there as well. To the right of that, you're going to be able to see a total cost of finished projects. That is strictly just for the finished projects. One of the last few things I do want to showcase is if we add extra invoices to our project, say these are the invoices that are directly for the project, paint, stuff like that, I want to showcase how the material cost will still update afterwards as well. So if we add in, I am just going to fill in this. I'll say this is Home Depot, and we can put, maybe we did brown stain this time. Whatever the case might be, we might have done brown stain, or it could be whatever, just a brief description. Put this at $75. Note that we're at $269.28 right now. When I add in the $75 here, we have now increased to $344.28. Shop supplies have also increased too. If we go to our project tracker, we have a running total of 1204.27. And again, it is still running with us. Now, lastly, one of the few things I do want to show before I do wrap this up is an email feature that I have included into this workbook. So if we go to our timesheets, and this was mentioned earlier, eventually, John, for example, or whoever, they might fill out this whole entire sheet, and eventually they will. They will finally get down to the bottom, and this is actually intended to be done by a monthly basis, so when the end of the month comes, you actually submit your timesheet just to kind of show what hours you put into what, and so we can allocate those hours and see what was the description of the work too. But when we do fill in all this information, note that we have the manager's email up here. Right now it's my work email, but a manager's email would be up there. And when they do fill this out, they'd come down here and they'd submit the timesheet. And it's going to run a few codes in the background. We will be able to note that the timesheet has been cleared. And I have an email that came in. And right here, it looks like here it is. It says attached is the timesheet. Please review at your earliest convenience. And if the manager opens up that Excel file, it is only going to be that person's timesheet alone. It will not have the several other sheets. It will just be that timesheet. So that's a very easy and convenient way to send out emails. And maybe if you have a folder that is set up with an email, you can email this timesheet directly into a folder, which would be a great use as well. But it is something that we did incorporate into this. Same works with Doug as well, and if we added more timesheets, we'd be able to use this too. Now lastly, when we feel like our project is fully complete, we may have the project done, and we have all the invoices entered that goes with the project, and we have all the material too. When we feel like we are at completion, we can come here in the top right and press complete project. So we'd press complete project, you get a prompt. Are you sure you want to complete this project? Yes. It will ask you a few questions beforehand. Would you like to add materials to the project before completion? This is used more of like a last chance. Hey, we're about ready to wrap up the project. Please add in all the material. And if the user presses yes, it'll ask you if you need to update your timesheets. If you press yes on that, it'll cancel out, allow you to update your timesheets. But if you press no, we'll go through this where we can set up material into the project. So we will go ahead and press this. This is the project we want to add material to, the one that we are completing. This material here is what we want to include. And we'll just put 2 of them for this example. Would you like to add additional materials? No. And it'll tell us that the project is completed successfully. Note that the project now is a green tab and it is followed up with done. And if we go here, it is no longer running totals, rather it's actually stamped totals. So we do not have equations up here, but they're actually calculated totals. And if we go to the project tracker, we'll be able to see right here as well that we have that total, which is there as well. And our hyperlink should work as well. So we can go here as well. So if we go back to the project tracker, one last thing to showcase, when you are finished, you'll be able to press hide completed, and those sheets are now hidden. This wraps up my presentation. If any questions or ideas arise, please feel free to reach out to me. Thank you.